a mighty group of folks who in the EPA Office of Research and Development with our partner, the Urban Waters Program, who are using social sciences to further climate resilience and adaptation work, particularly with an EJ and equity lens. And this project predates the current administration, but has gotten a lot more interest since the current administration's focus on EJ and equity. So we're trying to take as much advantage of this opportunity as possible to share and connect with others what we're working on. So we're really happy to be here. You know, with that, so partnerships are really critical to this. We have been working with Urban Waters and also with a group called the Lab at the Office of Personnel Management, who's helped us particularly with some design aspects of this. And then recently on a series of case studies with EPA regions, Region 2, which is New York, New Jersey, and the Caribbean. We have some regional staff members and also FEMA and New York State partners. EPA Region 4, which is the Southeast, and EPA Region 5 in the Upper Midwest, as well as the folks who have helped us design and facilitate these case studies, Climate Resilience Consulting, Adaptation International, and Kim Lundgren Associates, and then our local partners, the Amani Group in Region 4 and the Lower Grand River Organization of Watersheds in Grand Rapids, Michigan. So this is all the product of everyone's collaboration here. So just a little bit about our take on equitable resilience. We hope this effort helps communities strengthen the capacity to withstand, respond, adapt, and transform in the face of climate change and disasters in ways that are culturally appropriate, participatory, and we really focus, this is about community resilience, not individual resilience. We emphasize also acknowledging the deeply rooted social forces like socioeconomic inequalities, environmental racism, and political marginalization that affect how community members are vulnerable to disasters and climate risks, how they experience cascading consequences and bear the costs or experience the benefits of actions to increase resilience. The process that we've been using is human-centered design, which puts users at the center of product development and finding solutions. I'm sure many of you are familiar with this iterative process that starts with discovery. So we began with some initial workshops and interviews to understand how local practitioners do resilience planning and the challenges they face. We defined our problem, which is on, I'll show on the next slide, held an ideation workshop with local resilience practitioners and experts that generated a set of design principles. We developed a paper prototype, which we are currently
Emily, sorry. We're so sorry to interrupt.
Seeing your slides yet.
Oh, I'm sorry. That would be helpful. Let me.
There they are.
Perfect.
Okay.
We see.
So sorry about that. I got so excited and I jumped ahead, I think, without sharing them. But I think I can send them in any case if you would like to catch up for the recording. How about that?
Perfect.
Okay. So let me see. Oh, weird. It's somehow. No, I don't want to leave the meeting. Okay, well, I'll just continue. Somehow I lost the main screen, but that's okay. So as I said, this is the human-centered design process that we've been working with. And so our problem statement is that we kind of boiled down at the beginning of this was how might we help personnel from under-resourced jurisdictions to inclusively assess vulnerability and resilience to carry out equitable planning and actions. So this is for local level, either city or county agencies or organizations doing resilience planning, helps to self-assess disaster risks and vulnerabilities through an inclusive process that incorporates storytelling and empowers local participants in decision-making. Through the iterative process I mentioned, we came up with a series of design principles that the tool should build relationships and trust in communities, use data and local knowledge, including context and history, recognize trauma, facilitate actions, and be accessible for under-resourced communities, and also be flexible and adaptable for different kinds of planning needs. And this is an example of a design activity where we kind of started with our data-heavy visualization, did some drawing brainstorm activities, and then kind of came up with something more streamlined and user-friendly. So where we are in this process is in the process of testing our paper prototype, which is a static set of materials and instructions for doing an ERB project. As well, we're working on developing a software version, which will then create user guidance and training and release a 1.0 version to the public in 2023. And this is the first, so you can see kind of what this looks like right now, the first page of this paper prototype, which gives a quick overview, including what a potential user would be able to accomplish by going through this process, and lists the chapters of the tool, which I'll break down a little bit further here. So the first chapter, getting started, is about determining what kind of goals are around resilience and equity, doing a community engagement plan, logistics, engaging the communities. The next chapter through activities like stakeholder analysis and network mapping, or I should say planning for engagement. Then hazards, and then it goes to activities around hazards and equity, storytelling about hazards and disasters, sharing data and information, hazards and asset mapping, and a participatory social vulnerability assessment. And this is where, these last activities, we bring in wider set of community participants and also sectoral experts, which then moves to assessing resilience, it's a self-assessment using indicators for built natural and social environment, resulting in visualizations of those results. And finally, some activities for taking action around identifying priority action areas, setting up implementation and accountability, and reflecting on the process. And this is sort of led by a core work team of the leader, few key partners, including some community stakeholders, but then involves folks in the community more broadly as well. So what I thought might be most interesting to you all is hearing about these recent case studies, workshops that we've been doing. And so we've got, so our objectives for these case studies, were to test this activities, this paper prototype we have, and identify how they help identify hazards, social vulnerability, and equity issues, build relationships, and embody equity principles like inclusiveness and focus on systemic issues, and also to meet specific partner needs through the case study. So each of the contexts is a little bit different, and we wanted to see how adaptable this could be. So we identified EPA regional partners and case study communities they wanted to work with, contracted with the CRC team to conduct workshops in each case study community. Then we and EPA participated and observed the workshop, the planning meetings, and then we've been reflecting on our observations and revising the materials. And so the three locations that we have are Grand Rapids, Michigan. This is our Urban Waters partner location. They wanted to gather input on neighborhood level concerns and potential action steps with an equity lens to inform a watershed resilience plan that they're writing. EPA Region 4 wanted to work with rural communities in the Augusta, Georgia, Aiken, South Carolina area with the goal of increasing emergency preparedness by increasing awareness of hazards, providing training, and building a network of faith communities. And EPA Region 2 wanted to understand community needs better and explore how federal and state programs like brownfields or food security could support those needs. And so in each of these locations, we worked with different of our contractor partners, CRC, Adaptation International, and KLA. And so each of the case studies looks a little bit different because of their kind of unique goals that they had. So Urban Waters, they wanted to have 3 different workshops in different parts of the area. So to get more wide feedback from a wider set of folks. So we focused really on the third chapter, the activities around hazards and social vulnerability, and the fifth chapter. For Region 4, similarly, they wanted to engage 2 different communities. So we focused again on chapters 3 and chapter 5. They also wanted to include emergency preparedness training, so we built in space for that. And Grand Rapids wanted to help increase knowledge about the watershed and green infrastructure. Region 2, we had initially planned to kind of do the full set of activities, but given that recent mass shooting at the grocery store, we really are trying to rethink what we're doing and making sure that it fits the needs and the bandwidth that community partners have at the moment. And so we are going to be adding a training on trauma-informed approaches and doing some of these activities in a kind of more distributed format rather than convening workshops. So some of the initial takeaways from these case study workshops that we've had are that there really is a wide range of concerns. And we deliberately left this open by asking what people were concerned about in their neighborhoods. And some of the most common things we heard were water quality issues, gun violence, mental health issues, especially related to the pandemic, isolation, flooding, storms, and lack of access or resources broadly. We also learned that the role of the local lead is really critical in setting the tone of the workshop and establishing trust, so that it wasn't just EPA coming in, but that it was tied to a real purpose for bringing people together with established local leadership. And emphasizing the personal relationships with that local leadership that's part of the process. We also found that people really wanted learning opportunities. Many didn't know very much about some of the issues that were discussed, particularly about water issues. And so as we went on, we built in more time for structured learning and also just for participants to ask questions and share knowledge with each other. At the beginning, we didn't have a specific activity on assets and strengths, but it was something that participants talked about anyway, came up in discussions, and we found that including it in the mapping helped with identifying potential actions and contributing to a sense of possibility, which helped offset some of the heaviness of discussing things like hazards and disasters. One interesting thing that happened, and I'd be curious if others have thoughts on this, was that resilience was actually not a very sticky or useful word. It was how we framed the workshops, but aside from offering initial definition and that framing, the word itself wasn't really used very much. Instead, we talked about who's impacted, how, and why. So we might do some further exploring on this sort of theme of resilience and the concept and what it means and how it's used. We need to do more to connect the dots between existing inequities and the reasons for them and potential actions. So we'll be fine-tuning the flow of activities so that we're making sure that to continue to take up threads that come up throughout and incorporate more specific content and learning opportunities specifically on equity issues. But we also found that facilitation made a big difference here, that a knowledgeable facilitator can really draw out things in discussion on equity. And so we need to think about how to account for this in contexts where that isn't available. And finally, people really appreciated space for art and self-expression. We had an open mic during one of the workshops, and there was a few participants who sang a song or did a spoken word, and that really contributed to the community building feeling of the workshop. So we're taking these lessons and thinking about what this means for the tool. So for example, maybe, we say here our goal is to help people get ready to write and implement a resilience or hazard mitigation plan. Well, maybe the goal is actually to bring people together in a way that builds connections and energy for action. We are thinking about what chapters or activities are needed for different goals or different contexts. Like we were able to successfully adapt this to different contexts. So how do we help people chart a path through this that really gets at what is most useful for them? And yeah, similar question about adapting this for different contexts. So those are some of the things that we're thinking about. And we wanted to leave time for questions. So I think we'll just go there. Feel free, like I said, to reach out if you have questions or thoughts. We'd love to hear from folks, and hopefully we can all stay connected. So thanks, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity.